This is a car you might not necessarily know if you're in Ireland. It's the Genesis GV60. But what is Genesis, you might ask? It is to Hyundai what Lexus is to Toyota. It is a premium brand that's a little bit more upmarket, although this does share the similar underpinnings to the Ioniq 5 and also the Kia EV6, two really excellent electric cars. When you see the GV60 in isolation, it doesn't look especially big, but when you're actually next to it, it's quite a big car. It's a little bit deceptive in the same way the Hyundai Ioniq 5 is. At the back, you get this sloping roofline. The charge port is on the driver's side here. It's an electrically operated. That's quite neat the way it does that. It's also got vehicle to load, so you can plug in, obviously charge with the battery, but you can also have power come out of the battery to an external source if you need to power something like you're on a picnic and you want to have a coffee machine, for example. You can do all those features. Quite neat to have. The roofline, yeah, it's a little bit sloping here, but actually when you're sitting inside, there's not that much of an impact in the amount of space you have. The one thing that is missing is that there's actually no rear glass window here. You just get the main window. The rest of the car, well, you get these flush fitting door handles. So when the car is locked, these are flush with the door, but once you unlock it, they pop open. It's very easy to open and close the door. One thing you might notice about this is that it doesn't have conventional door mirrors. It has a camera-based system. That is an option, so you don't have to have these. These are an extra. They work pretty well. We've seen these kind of systems on cars like the Audi e-tron, Lexus ES and Honda E. Not everyone likes them. These are one of the better versions of how that technology is used, and I'll talk a little bit more about that once we get out on the drive. The front end, well, you've got this kind of clamshell bonnet and the split headlight design, makes it quite distinctive. This is on 19-inch wheels, which they don't look especially small on a car of this size. Thankfully, there's also a nice bit of sidewall, so there's a bit of cushioning when you're out on the road. One of the party pieces as soon as you get into the GV60 is its gear selector. Not the sort of thing you might expect, but it has this very interesting kind of crystal ball look. But when you turn on the ignition, it swivels around and you have this knurled gear selector. It looks very snazzy, looks pretty impressive. Every time somebody gets in the car with you, they will be wowed by it. Hey, it's a bit different to the usual gear selector, right? The interior of the GV60 is where you start to see where your money is going, because the look and feel of it very much lives up to that premium billing. Okay, the light colors probably aren't the most practical thing, but they do look impressive, and it obviously contrasts quite nicely against the metallic look of all the switchgear. And switchgear is an important thing in this car, because although there is this very impressive dual screen display in front of you for the dashboard, there's still a lot of physical controls. So buttons like your heated or cooled seats or your heated steering wheel, and even navigating the infotainment system, it's all done with physical buttons, which is really good because it just makes it much easier to adjust or to change something while you're driving and you're on the move. You're not fiddling around with a touch screen trying to find where the temperature setting is. It's right here. You can just look down and adjust it up or down without having to cast your gaze away from the road. The dual screen display is very nice. It looks impressive. The graphics are nice, clear, crisp, as you would expect in a car like this. And the infotainment system has all the usual features you'd want. For a lot of people, obviously, connecting their phone is what's going to be the priority. And this does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so you can have that up on the screen there. So if you do want to use your Waze, your Google Maps, or your Spotify, or any other apps, you can very easily do that, as well as obviously making all your calls. And actually charging your device on the move is a lot easier too. You've got two USB-C ports down there, a 12-volt socket, and a wireless charging pad here as well. So there's no reason you can't keep all those devices topped up when you're on the move. Finding a comfortable seating position is pretty easy. The electric seats have a ton of adjustment in this car, more than you'll get in any usual electric car, so you can adjust the seat any way you want. And the steering wheel is also electrically adjustable as well for reach or rake, so there's plenty of adjustability there to find a seating position regardless of your height. The one thing that gets a lot of attention as soon as you see this car are the optional camera mirrors. You don't have to have them, they are an option. They are impressive. They definitely fit in with the high-tech look of the GV60, and having used a number of camera systems in other cars like the Audi e-tron, this is one of the better versions, better way of doing things. It's not perfect. It does take a little bit of getting used to, but the position of the screens here are much closer to where your natural eye line would fall. It's much easier to use, it's much easier to glance down, especially when you're looking at the other side and the passenger side. Now Genesis backs that up as well with a very clever secondary camera system. When you turn on the indicators, regardless of which side, you get a fisheye view of your blind spot. So as soon as you turn that on, you can then see exactly what's in your blind spot when you're driving along. So even if you don't have the fancy camera version, you still do get a very good system that's great for keeping you that little bit safer on the move. Other practical features, well, the thing is you've got this floating console here, so underneath you have all that extra space, great for throwing in a bag or a rucksack. You've got further little cubby hole here in front. That's useful if you don't want things rolling around on the floor. There is a little bit more space underneath the armrest as well, and there's this very convenient pull-out glove box. Navigating the infotainment system is made easier by two ways of doing it. Obviously you've got the touch screen, so you can just use that and it's very easy. The screen reacts very quickly to it, or you can use this rotary controller on the center console. It's very easy to use and navigate your way around. It has a nice feel to it, it's flexible, so it's very easy to go up or down or back through different menus. It's like what you get in BMW's iDrive system, which is still one of the very best ones around. So Genesis has done the right thing by adding this as well. Getting in is a little bit easier because it does sit up a little bit higher off the ground. Once you're in either the outer seats, there is a lot of room back here. Okay, it's not maybe quite as easy to get your foot in underneath the seat in front when it's down a little bit lower, but there's a lot of knee room here and a reasonably good amount of headroom as well. This driving position is set up from my usual driving position, and I'm about 5'8", just for reference, so you can get an idea of how much room there is. But even if you have a taller driver in there, you're still going to have plenty of room. The armrest is kind of nice and comfortably low. Your window controls are there. Interestingly, there's also a lock and unlock function on the back doors, which is something you don't always see. It's one of the kind of quirks of this car, as is the cup holder that's mounted in front. It's not the usual place for a cup holder, but it works quite well having it there. And you've also then got air vents on the B pillar here, so just behind the driver's seat you've got an air vent right there. Very easy to direct it. It's actually more effective having it there than having it in the back of the center console. Speaking of which, there are two more USB-C charge ports there, and quite interestingly, there's another storage area that goes right the way in here with a little bit of a netting there. So it's very easy to put bigger items in there out of the way. You still have a little bit of room here in the back of these pockets. So if you want to put in a book, magazine, or a tablet computer, for example, very easy to do that as well. The middle seat, well, this is usually the short straw in the back, and it's the same in this car. Granted, there is a fully flat floor in the back, so you're not losing out too much in terms of legroom, but this is much narrower and a lot firmer, so you're really going to not want to be in the middle seat for too long. If you don't want to use that, you can still pull this down. You've got two more cup holders in here as well, so you can have an armrest in the back. But the outer seats, they're very, very comfortable. The seat bases are nice and long, so you do get a little bit more support, and although they don't move forward or back, you can recline the seats as well, so there is a little bit of a recline on the seat, so you can have it up or you can have it a little bit further back as well, so you can do a little bit of manual adjustment with those as well. Also, both of the two outer rear seats have ISOFIX points as well, so it's quite easy if you do need to put in a child or booster seat. One other neat feature as well is if you're sitting behind the front passenger seat and nobody's in it, on the side here there are physical controls for adjusting the seat, so you can move it forward and even slide it forward out of the way, a bit like a chauffeur mode as it were. That's really useful for either the person in the back or even the driver to easily adjust the seat to have a little bit more room for whoever's sitting in the back. Now around the back of the GV60 you get a pretty large electrically operated tailgate. That lifts to reveal 432 litres of boot space. Also includes a little bit of handy underfloor storage for your charging cables and other odds and ends. The rear seats can be folded down in a 60-40 split. You also get an additional 53 litres of boot space underneath the front bonnet. Again, maybe it's a useful place for keeping some valuables out of sight or your charging cables. The driving position will immediately hit it off with some people because you sit that little bit higher up as you do in a regular crossover or SUV, and the fact that there's so much adjustment available in that driving position as well is another big bonus. What might surprise some people is that the suspension is on the firm side. This is particularly noticeable when you're driving on slightly more back roads like this. It's fine on a motorway or around town, but it is just on the firmer side. It's not super luxurious as you might expect. It's definitely Genesis trying to be a little bit sportier in how it has set up the GV60. Now, the numbers on paper might not seem all that spectacular by EV standards. It's got 229 horsepower and 350 Newton meters, but it's quick enough. It easily gets up to speed. If you need to do a quick overtake, for example, there's more than enough power there on reserve. Most of the time you're going to drive this car around, you're only going to be using 10-15% of what it's actually capable of, and it does cruise along quite well. But I guess some people would like to have that little bit of power on tap, and when you put your foot down, it has no issue with getting up to speed pretty quickly. You can also choose from a number of different driving sounds, including quite a futuristic electric motor sound, but there's even something that vaguely resembles a V8 engine. And those sounds also adjust depending on the driving mode. So when you go into a sport mode, for example, not only does it increase the sound of the volume and sharpen the reaction from the accelerator pedal, but these seats also come in a little bit more on the side bolsters to give you a little bit more support as well in the corners. That's pretty neat. Don't worry though, it can take off that speed every bit as quickly. There's a pretty good brake pedal feel, and it will haul up to a stop in quite a short distance. When you're not having to stop in a hurry and you just want to cruise along, there is a sail mode. So when you lift your foot off the accelerator, the car will just sail along. Or you can also then choose from a number of different energy recuperation levels. In its strongest setting, which is done by adjusting the paddles on the back of the steering wheel, it does effectively become a one pedal driving. And it's great for when you're driving around town, because you effectively, once you lift off the accelerator pedal, the car will come almost to a dead stop. It's great, you get used to it very quickly, and it just makes driving that little bit more enjoyable and a little bit more relaxing. So that's our review of the Genesis GV60. It's a pretty interesting alternative to some of the mainstream and premium electric SUVs that are out there. The interior is superb, the quality is second to none. It's every bit as good as what you'll find in some of the really established premium brands, but also it's got a decent battery, good driving range, and lots of tech. If you want to know more about this car, head over to the website dcev.ie. You'll find it linked in the description below. And if you watch the video this far, why not give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.